Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the fifth session of Sunoikisis Digital Classics Summer 2020. Today, we have a session about open access for digital classics, and the idea was to give you an overview, okay, about different resources we have today for teaching and learning digital classics. And the session will be about digital classical philology and basically digital classical history, okay? And you have, as usual, the class outline in GitHub, and I can also share my screen so that we can see together, okay, the session in GitHub, where, okay, we have different readings, and I'm going to comment these readings, and also three exercises. Well, today the speakers are Rada, Varga from Bolyai University. I apologize for my pronunciation as usual, and then myself. Okay, so today I will talk a bit about open access for digital classics. And this is a topic that we have been discussing a lot in Sunoikisis, of course, considering that Sunoikisis is an international consortium for teaching digital classics, but we thought that we can give you a sort of overview, okay, of the resources we have today, especially because we are in this situation in this semester due to the coronavirus. So we are offering an overview of resources we have for open resources we have for teaching and learning digital classics. But I think I can start. I will start with the slides. Okay, so. Okay, here are our slides. Open access for digital classics. So in this first part, I will very briefly talk about, open access, and then I will present resources for digital classical philology, and then in the second part of the session, my colleague Rada Varga, she will talk about resources for digital classical history. Open access, well, I don't think I have to talk a lot about open access because this is a well-known expression. But I would like to give you just a few resources, okay? If you're interested in open access in general, open access for scholarship, and also open access for in general for the humanities. I have here two books. Okay, you can see the slide. Of course, there are many resources, many publications online concerning open access and open data. For my experience and also while teaching, I see that these two resources are interesting, especially if you want to understand a bit more about what we mean by open access for scholarship. We have to be very careful in this sense, and in the humanities. The first resource is this book by Peter Zuber, who is an expert of open access. And this is a short book. This is accessible, so this book is accessible. You can download the PDF through the MIT Press website, and so you can get this. This is a short book with an introduction, a concise introduction, as you can see on the website, concerning open access, especially for a scholarship. So if you are a student or if you are a scholar, and if you want to know more about open access, how to publish open data, you have an interesting, short, concise, but expert description concerning open access and links to different resources. This is, as you can see, this is the PDF of the book, and there are 10 concise, I have to say, chapters about open access, the motivation, varieties, again, for scholarship and for research. Okay, this is important. We have to specify that. And I think that there is also an interesting chapter 7, about economics. So there is in this book also an introduction to the business model for open access, which is discussed today a lot. So if you study or if you teach also digital classics, and if you're interested in open access, I think that this is an interesting introduction to this topic. The second publication that I find interesting in this sense is this other book, Open Access and the Humanities. Again, you can access it, you can get the PDF of the full book of single chapters, where you have in this case a specific introduction and discussion about open access and the humanities, of course, as the title specifies, but specifically for scholarship and for publishing your data. Okay, and you have also in this case interesting references to external resources. But now, and then I'm going to present the third book in this case, and this is the book that I recently edited for the Greuter, and this is not self-promoting, but given that this session is about open access for digital classics, I have to mention that I had the opportunity to publish this book because the German publisher, the Greuter, wanted to invited me to publish a book about digital classical philology in a series, which is a series Age of Access with a question mark. Okay, this is a series published by the Greuter concerning many different topics, not only philology or the humanities, but also other disciplines, other fields. And the goal of this series is to discuss what is accessibility today. How can we access data in general in our society? Of course, again, for scholarship and for research. And so this is the reason why I had the opportunity to edit this book, inviting other colleagues, and also this book is open. So we had the opportunity, thanks to Knowledge Unlatched, to publish this book as open access. And you can access it, you can download the chapters, and this publication is a collection of different 5 main topics concerning digital classical philology today. So how we can study classical philology with digital resources, and how we can also learn, okay, to use resources for digital classics. And we have different sessions. Okay, we identified 5 main topics. Of course, we could include many other topics. The first one was open data of Greek and Latin sources, and I will briefly show you later specific resources in this sense. Then we have a second session, cataloging and citing Greek and Latin authors and works. So the first one is about open data for Greek and Latin. Then a section about catalogs and citations, so the problem of data citation for Greek and Latin sources. Then we have the third session about data entry, collection, and analysis for classical philology. So basically, how can we digitize ancient Greek and Latin sources? How can we collect them and then analyze them? And then we have a session about critical editing and annotating Greek and Latin sources. In this case, we have a discussion about for digital critical editions, but also open annotations for ancient Greek and Latin sources. And then finally, we have a session about linguistic annotation and lexical databases for Greek and Latin. So how we can produce linguistic annotations and how we can collect lexical data. As you can see here, we have topics that we have been discussing a lot in Sunoikisis during these years. I would like to go back to the slides because following these 5 main topics, I selected a few resources that today we can use and you can use for teaching and learning digital classics. Of course, this is a selection. We can add many other resources, but this is in some way where we are now for open access and open data. So the first main component is open data of Greek and Latin sources. How can we work today with open data, of Greek and Latin sources? Here I'm mentioning 2 resources we have. The first one is the Open Greek and Latin. Open Greek and Latin is a project that we started in Leipzig a few years ago, and the project includes other previous, present, and hopefully future projects. So Open Greek and Latin now has this website where you can access different resources for accessing open data of Greek and Latin. Of course, part of it is the Perseus Digital Library, and the idea of Open Greek and Latin is to expand the sources we have in the Perseus Digital Library. The main idea is to add more editions for the same source. We know very well that one of the problems of the first digital libraries was and still is that usually we have one edition per source, and this is due to various reasons, because of course at the beginning and still today it's difficult to have the digital version of many different editions of the same source. But the goal of Open Greek and Latin is to add more editions for the same source and to expand, in this case, for example, the Perseus Digital Library. And part of it is also the first 1,000 years of Greek, which is a project developed by the Center for Hellenic Studies at Harvard University for, as you can read, including other sources, especially late sources that are not present in the Perseus Digital Library and also in Open Greek and Latin. And then, in the website of the Open Greek and Latin, you can find references to other related projects of the Center for Hellenic Studies, University of Virginia, Harvard Library. But you can find and you can access these. The main idea is that through the Open Greek and Latin you can access data, and we have, for example, the first 1,000 years of Greek project, where there is a GitHub a page where you can access sub-repositories with a collection of Greek sources, more sources that you don't find in Perseus, and through a GitHub repository you can access data. You can basically download these data in an XML format and encoded also according to the CTS architecture, and you can use these data for various purposes, for teaching, for researching, etc. The Perseus Digital Library, of course, is a well-known resource, and also in this case through the GitHub repository, you can access data, as I will show you later. Another resource we have, because this is a current project, is the Digital Latin Library. And the Digital Latin Library is a recent project, as you can see, whose goal is to publish critical editions of Latin text. So again, as for Open Greek and Latin, the idea is not only to produce machine-readable text of Latin sources, but try to produce critical editions and possibly more editions of the same source. Also in this case, the idea is to have open data, to produce data accessible, for the audience. The Digital Latin Library is also working on a catalog, a complete catalog, or at least a big catalog of Latin sources, and is inheriting also the catalog of the Packard Humanities Institute collection. And I will show you later the characteristics of the Digital Latin library. Also, the Digital Latin library, in this case, okay, you see the main page of the project, but you can find different resources, edition, and also, of course, the catalog. And there are also other resources like textual criticism, so how to deal with textual criticism today, for example, how we can represent the critical apparatus in a digital environment, and then other resources. And also in this case, the project has a GitHub repository with sub-repositories with open data, okay, for Latin sources. So through these, of course, there are other collections online for Greek and Latin data, but I think that through these resources you can identify main problems, how to publish open data, and especially how to work on the catalog and how to cite Greek and Latin data. Then a second, okay, main topic is working with catalogs, because of course when we collect ancient sources, the main problem is also to produce a catalog. And also in this case, I'm referring to, well, the Perseus catalog, which is the catalog of the Perseus Digital Library, but not only, because the Perseus catalog includes authors and works with references to open access editions. This is important. So the Perseus catalog is bigger than the Perseus Digital Library. There are Greek, Latin, and also Arabic sources. Is connected to the Open Greek and Latin, and also to the first 1,000 years of Greek. And the important part of the Perseus catalog is that you can not only browse the catalog through the website, as you can see, but there is a GitHub repository where you can access the catalog and metadata, okay, about the catalog. This resource, if you access it in these pages, in the search history, but also in the help page, you can find a complete description of the catalog, of the standards used in the catalog, and also about data citation, so how to cite ancient authors and works. This is an example. We have a page about, okay, Thucydides, an ancient Greek historian, and the important part of this catalog is that is rich of metadata, and the Perseus catalog is ingesting many resources from external metadata from external resources, and is also contributing to external resources, like, for example, via the Virtual International Authority file, which is ingesting data from the Perseus catalog for ancient authors. And one important aspect of the Perseus catalog is that it is using the site architecture, which is a specific protocol for producing canonical citations of ancient authors. And we have been talking a lot about the CTS protocol and the site architecture in our sessions. And in the Perseus catalog, you can find concrete examples for using this specific architecture for citing author works, editions, translations of works. As you can see in the website, where in the interface you can see, okay, in this case, for example, okay, you have a page about the author, okay, Thucydides with a specific identifier, and then a lot of metadata from external resources, and also the name, for example, of the author in other languages, etc. And then, of course, being a catalog, you have a collection of editions, okay, of the works of a specific author, in this case Thucydides, editions that are today available with open access, okay, in different formats, of course. There are many editions that are already digitized, part of Open Greek and Latin or other resources, or editions that are openly available, but for example, as PDF through Google Books or Internet Archive. And the Perseus catalog has a GitHub repository where you can find really the metadata and the files. The main distinction is between a repository for Greek literature and Latin literature, and within each sub-repository you can find data. You can collect data for authors and works using a specific standards. For example, you can also download specific files for XML files using standards like mods and MAS for representing bibliographic references of ancient authors and works. Like in this case, the catalog data, for example, includes two sub-repositories, one using the MAS standard for ancient authors, and then the other sub-repository where you have XML files with complete metadata for, as you can see, Greek and Latin works, but also for Arabic literature. And then another interesting catalog today is the catalog of the Digital Latin Library. Also in this case, the idea is to provide, to produce a big catalog of Latin literature with metadata, following the principles of linked open data. And in this case, the catalog is ingesting data from the catalog of the Packard Humanities Institute collection. And so also in this case, as you can see, you can find references to authors and works. You can, of course, search an author. For example, in this case, I select this author, and then you have, of course, also in this case, specific metadata, and then for each work, you have links to external resources, not only metadata. As you can see, in this case, the Digital Latin Library is ingesting PHI IDs, also in this case, there is a use of the site architecture for citing specifically works and editions. Then there is a DLL identifier, and then you can find, links to external resources like Epigraphs, but also Internet Archive or Google Books, where you can find these editions. And later, the Digital Latin Library will also add new text of critical editions of Latin authors. So this is the idea. So open catalogs in the sense to have catalogs that are accessible and that provide open metadata about ancient literature in according to the best practices of linked open data. Then we have, other resources for data entry, collection, and analysis. What do we mean by that? In this case, I have selected two resources. The first one is LACE, which is a specific resource for OCRing ancient Greek. In this resource, you can find the results of OCR, specifically for ancient Greek. Bruce Robertson is responsible for this resource, and there is a lot of work behind for digitizing ancient Greek sources. And through, the website, in this case, you can find the complete description, of the method used for producing, for performing optical character recognition of ancient Greek sources, editions of ancient Greek sources. And the interesting thing is that through this resource, you can access many OCR outputs, and you can also experiment with editing, OCR outputs. And through this for example, there is a rich, through text, you can access a rich collection of editions of ancient Greek authors that have been digitized, OCR'd, and through this resource you can visualize, you can access this interface where you can visualize the PDF image, the image of a specific page, and then on the right you can see the OCR output, and through this resource you can also edit the OCR. So this is an interesting resource to understand how OCR is working today and how we can produce machine readable data for ancient Greek sources, which is the first step if we want to produce open data for ancient Greek sources. The second resource I have here in this slide is the Classical Language Toolkit. In this case, is a resource for, well, analyzing, we can say, data, open data of ancient Greek and Latin sources. This is a toolkit, that offers natural language processing support for the study of historical languages, I have to say, not only Greek and Latin, but as you can see in the description of the web page, there are also other languages included, and there is a specific part where you have a complete list of the languages covered by this resource, by the CLTK, including Greek and Latin. And for example, if I select Greek, I can access different sub-documents concerning different aspects, like dealing with character encoding the alphabet, or how to convert beta code to Unicode, then other resources for lemmatizing ancient Greek, for name entity recognition, for part of speech tagging. These are things that we have been discussing a lot in Sunoikisis, because we have many sessions about linguistic annotation. But if you want to explore a bit the use of NLP for historical languages, I think that the CLTK is an interesting resource to start exploring these possibilities. Then critical editing. Well, of course, this is a big topic where we have many publications, many projects discussing today what we mean by scholarly critical editions. What do we mean by digital critical editions? In this case, I have selected one project. Of course, we have many other projects. And this project is, again, an open project, in the sense the idea in this case is to collect the manuscript tradition of Homer. This is the Homer multi-text project, which is a project of the Center for Hellenic Studies at Harvard University, for not only collecting images of the manuscript tradition of Homer, the Homeric tradition, but also producing transcriptions of these manuscripts, and in the end producing digital publications. Again, also in this case, the resource is interesting because you can find not only very beautiful high-resolution images of Homeric manuscripts, but there are also publications where you can find a discussion about critical editing and the possibility to think, to conceive in a new way the critical apparatus for the future. And through the resource, you can access, of course, the manuscripts that are now available, and not only you have, of course, a description of these manuscripts, and you can also download high-resolution images, but you can also access data produced by scholars, but also by students, while transcribing the text of these manuscripts, including the Homeric scholia, the scholia of these manuscripts. And you can also browse, in this case, the Iliad, and you can also access, for example, the image citation tool, which is an interesting resource where you can not only read, like in this case, a folio of a manuscript of Homer, but you can also cite, okay, you can select a portion of this image, okay, and you can, for example, produce a stable identifier for this specific region of interest. So there is a lot of work in this project, for example, for citing images, okay. This project is the project that originally developed the site architecture for producing canonical citations of classical sources, and there is a specific use of the site architecture for, in this case, for Homeric manuscripts and the text preserved in these manuscripts, and also for citing, for example, images and parts of images of these manuscripts if you want to align, for example, a specific verse of Homer with your transcription, your translation, etc. And this resource is fully documented and you can use it, okay? And then the final topic, okay, I mentioned is open well, this is, in this case is I forgot to change the title of the slide. This is about linguistic annotation. Again, if you navigate a bit our repository of Sunoikisis, you can find many sessions about linguistic annotations, about, for example, tree banking and other aspects. And in this case, I mentioned a recent project, linking Latin, recent because this is a project funded by the ERC, and the project started 2 years ago, where the goal is to build a knowledge base of linguistic resources for Latin. So this is an example of a project, again, in the spirit of linked open data for collecting, in this case, resources about linguistic resources about Latin. And again, also this resource is open. You can access open data through linking Latin and use this data specifically for linguistic annotation. So with these slides, I tried to give you an overview, okay, of some of the projects we have today, projects that are accessible and projects that are producing open data for ancient Greek and Latin. But now, if we don't have a question, I think that we can move to the second part of this presentation, and we can go back also. Okay, I can stop sharing. Now we can see again our guests in the call. Rada, my colleague Rada. Rada, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the second part of the presentation is going to focus on open access resources for ancient history, mainly classical ancient history, of course. From the multitude of resources, I have chosen to present the ones which are general enough and which have repositories large enough to be useful to anybody who studies ancient history at one point or the other. For more specific researches, obviously there are many projects who take matters into details and who focus on different spatial areas, on different periods of time, and which are very specific in nature. Of course, in a general session like this, we cannot discuss all of those, not even start to. To give you an idea on the multitude of projects which can be useful for research in classical history and for teaching as well, I just want to show you the Digital Classicist wiki. I think this resource has been discussed in previous sessions of Sunoikisis during this semester, but I just wanted to show you the project page, which contains over 450 projects. So a lot of projects, and if you are interested in very specific matters, it is a good start to come to the Digital Classicist wiki page and to try to look there for open access projects on whatever you're looking for. As well, we have a page listing tools where we have repositories, applications, free editors, a lot of things that can be very useful, especially for teaching, I think, but not exclusively, for personal research as well. In order to keep some order into the presentation, I have grouped the presented projects in three big categories. So we have geographical, let's say, resources, epigraphical resources, and archaeological ones. The first ones, I think, have to be the ones focusing on geography and geospatial annotations, because I think it's very basic that for any research regarding ancient history or any kind of history, as a matter of fact, you have to begin from the places where events took place, where archaeological sites are situated, and so on and so forth. So first we have Pleiades, which is a huge repository of sites. It lists over 37,000 sites, as you can see. And here we can look. We can look for Rome, I intend to look for. But as you can see, we also have particular archaeological sites listed, which can be very, very useful, not only for the geographical location, but also for the information offered. Here we have a little preview map, but I won't wait for it to load, as I don't know exactly how good my internet connection is at this point. And here we have the unique identifier for each entry. And it will load eventually. And here, as you can see, we have all the information that we might need on a location. Of course, the placing on a map, the information on the entry itself, how we can, the canonical URI for this page, the latitude and longitude, the names as they can appear, connections with many sites in this case, of course. In other cases, there aren't so many connections, or there is no connection. And the bibliography, which again, in the case of Rome, is vast. But most of the entries in Pleiades are based on the Barrington Atlas, so this is important. And present in initial provenance, as you can see, and present in almost all entries from here. And the citation of this resource in Wikipedia. Here, we can download the information on this page in various formats. So let's see, for example, JSON and RDF XML. Here is JSON. And here is the RDF. And all the information on the page shown before are listed are here in various formats. But we can also download. We can also download the so-called dump files. So the files containing all the information of the website, not only information on an entry. And we have again JSON for this, CSV, KML, RDF. So basically, all the formats which are generally used are available for downloading. Let's see, for example, how one of them looks. Let's go to the locations latest. This is very useful if you need the information to be imported in a database or to use it for your own project in one way or the other. And here we will have a CSV with all the information, which is very, very accessible and very compatible with most of the imaginable formats. Okay, good. Another resource which is simpler, let's say, than Pleiades, but has its usefulness, is the Digital Atlas of the Roman Empire. So here we are focusing only on the Roman history. They have undertaken some changes to the website, and I don't find all the functionalities that it had before, but probably is just a working phase. The login doesn't work for now, so I believe they are still working on the site. But the important thing is that from here we can simply download pictures with maps with a good resolution, and they have a lot of places on these maps. So as you can see, if you want details of a certain area, they have virtually all cities, villages, forts, fortresses from the Roman period. And with the geographical setting, so it can be really useful if you need a map for general teaching, or if you need a map for a presentation to give people a geographical idea on what you're talking about. It can be saved from here. A more specific resource, let's say, it's Orbeez, developed by the Stanford University. We will try it on my unsupported browser. Orbeez offers mainly routes and itineraries, which again can be very, very useful because, as you will soon see, they come with a lot of additional interesting information. So let's look for something. Let's say Ara Agrippinensium, so Köln to Tarraco, Tarragona. And here we have the route, and we can choose. We can choose in which season we want to imagine that the traveling took place, or maybe we know from a written source about a certain commercial endeavor or military expedition. And let's say the default is summer, because they generally travel during the milder seasons, but let's say spring. Fastest route, which is generally also the cheapest route, but not always. And here, road, what means of transportation we want to employ, river, civilian or military, and sea, fast, slow, daylight. So we can go with the generally acceptable coordinates, or if we have the specifics, if we have something very specific in mind, we can go for that. And we're calculating. And as you can see, it's a long distance, and it takes 31 days, almost 32 days. What's interesting is that we can see here the duration and the means of transportation. When I touch the bar here, the portion of the route on the map is highlighted, as you can see, and these are the main cities. Okay, we also have the price. So if we have a merchant transporting wheat, this is the price per kilo he would need to sell his wheat at in order to make it acceptably profitable. And this is the price per passenger in a carriage, which is obviously much, much, much more expensive. We can also calculate networks. The route network for Ara Agrippinensium in this case. And it tells us the distance to certain important sites. We can also see it like this. Zones. These are the zones. This is interesting, I think, because here we can easily see, well, obviously some of this information is intuitive. You can imagine it was like that. But we can see the very accessible zones, the less accessible zones, but still accessible without major problems, and the zones which were quite far away, which were dangerous to travel to, expensive. So you needed motivation, good motivation for travel, for this sort of travel. I want to show you something else here. If we go to the older version of the site, we have more information about the functionalities of the site and how we can use it. So here we have tutorials, basically video tutorials, mapping tutorials, everything for Orbeez. If you want to go into the details of this, this is the place to start for sure. Good. These were the geographical resources I wanted to talk about, and now we can get to the epigraphical resources. I won't go into all the details of each resource I'm presenting because it would take too much time. I just want to show you this is the Epigraphs Datenbank from Heidelberg, which is maybe the best resource for Roman epigraphy. This is the main page. We have here this province distribution, which is very nice, and it gives us an important detail. If you're looking here in the right of the screen, you can see that it says the work status. So EDH fully entered. This is important. Here, for example, in Aquitania, it's provisional. It is important because if we click on these provinces, we will get each inscription from the province, of course, but we will also get something else. If we go here, we get these graphics and graphs and statistics, which we can use in our research. We don't need to redo these calculations, and this is, I think, extremely important. We can download them as XLS, as you can see. And these are the inscriptions. So from Dacia, we have this distribution by type of inscription, by type of monument, the chronological distribution. The chronological distribution is a bit rough, because ingesting so many data, they didn't have the possibility to go into the details of the dating of each inscription. They just took the information from the large corpora, but it's still good. Maybe some inscriptions can be dated more exactly than they have it here. So it's not half a century, but it's 20 years, the range. But as far as I know, I didn't find mistakes. So the information is definitely good. From this point of view, so if we want to employ the graphs, if we want to use them, we have to be sure that the province is entered fully, that all the inscriptions from the province are entered in the database, because otherwise, of course, the statistics have no value. Good, and I will also show you now how an individual inscription file looks like and what we can do with it in case it loads. Okay, if it doesn't load, no problem. This is how the individual inscription file looks like. They have a lot of external links, and I believe this is extremely, extremely good and extremely useful. They have links to Lupa, where you get a lot of pictures with the monument, or as many as they are available. You can click on all locations and you will be sent to a map. You have details on the type of the monument, type of the inscription, and so on. As well, you will have details on the persons and links to external repositories. As well, here are external links to Pleiades, to Trismegistus, to Packard for the Greek inscriptions, and the historic period link. There is a repository, an ontology, let's say, with the chronology. As well, they also have a section of downloads where their dump files are available, and they can be downloaded in different formats. As well, this is very useful and very easy to use, very easy to import, and compatible with many other databases in case you need them used in a different place. Another epigraphic data bank is Klaus Lobby. At some point, Klaus Lobby had more inscriptions than the EDH, the Heidelberg database, because Heidelberg was focusing on stone monuments, and Klaus Lobby introduced everything, including instrumenta, military diplomas, and so on. But in the meanwhile, the database from Heidelberg also has minor epigraphy included. So But for cross-checking, it is good to use obviously both databases. This is the search page, and as you can see, you can look for publication, province, place, fragments from a text, material, inscription genus, and person status. I wanted to show you this. So here you have options for the types of inscription and for the status of the persons involved. You can either choose and or. As well, they have this for the material, and it is nice that they chose Latin, as it's supposed to be for somebody looking into an epigraphic database for the Roman Empire. It's supposed to be a lingua franca. Good. For I think I am running a bit late, so I will try to be more synthetic maybe. For the Greek epigraphy, the Packard Humanities Institute database is the most valuable resource. This is how the database looks like. And here we can search. Here we can search. It has the, let's say, the Greek alphabet. So even if we don't know how to put it on our keyboard, it is here. And we can search all regions or not, or we can choose. And it's going to give us a statistics on the attestation. Of course, I've looked for Atal. It's generally used in the name Atalos, but not only, so it will be a lot of attestations. We can get this, a concordance list, which again is very nice. And this is how the individual inscriptions look like. We have the region, the corpus, then the corpus from which it has been ingested, and this is the pH number, so the unique identifier from the Packard database. It doesn't have so many download options, and it doesn't have so many formats for the information to be downloaded in. It's it's not something to, it's not made for the information to be taken from here and used in different other ways. It's meant to be used like a database which puts together all the corpora with listing Greek epigraphs. So it's something to use for research very directly, not to explore in other, not to explore for other tools and make compatible for other tools. Another resource is Trismegistus, which is a rather vast resource. They have introduced a login option, not option, obligativity, for some time, but it is it's free to subscribe, but I don't know if it counts as open access anymore if you have to make a subscription. But for now, during this time when we all work from home, it's open. Trismegistus has been developed for Egypt, for resources for epigraphic resources from Egypt, and this is their strong point even now, even if now it has developed to encompass Greek, Latin epigraphs as well. For example, let's see, let's look for a Roman province, and as you can see, you can find many You can find the inscriptions from Dalmatia. Some features are not available, as one can see. And this is how the Trismegistus entry looks like, again with links for the places, for the language, the material, and the bibliography. All features are interesting and worth exploring, but I will just show you the people, which is an onomastic database. Again, for Egypt, it's very, very good. Let's look for the name Socrates. It doesn't matter if we write it with a C or a K. It understands what we're looking for. And here we have the number of attestations. Attestations by century and by provenance. Here is the attestation by centuries. And the attestation by provenance, which again is useful and interesting. And here we have a network for the name. Again, we are talking about, I would enlarge it. We are talking about the name, not about persons. So here is our Socrates, and here are the direct and indirect connections this name has, as in familial naming patterns. Okay. So now, briefly, the resources for archaeology. Actually, I have picked 3 resources focusing on small finds, on objects, because there are resources listing archaeological sites, but they are not what we would call comprehensive. They are focused on a certain area, very focused on a certain area. The first archaeological resource is created by DAI, and it's Arachne. We can look for anything basically here, for a place, for a type of artifact, but we can also look for a name. Let's say Jupiter. We have many options. We can go to the general, just Jupiter, and here we see the type of objects listed in the database. Place, location, type, city, subregion, area, let's say, country, region, dating, literature. And we can click on one of them, and we will see here the map. We will see here the unique identifier for this entry, images, and all the details connected to this artifact. We can go to the category for links. Now, this is very useful if we know exactly what we're looking for, or if we want a general image for a certain type of artifacts. But the general image will not be a complete one, because the ingestion of artifacts into Arachne was not really systematically made. Data has been introduced for various projects, for various sites in which members of the DAI had interests. So it is not something to cover a certain type of artifacts entirely, or a certain area entirely. But nonetheless, it offers many useful information. The portable antiquities scheme is a regional resource indeed, as it has small finds, artifacts from Britain. But even so, it is very useful. It is very useful for the archaeology of other Roman provinces or other places, not necessarily Roman provinces. Excuse me, because they have artifacts from all historical periods. It is useful because analogies can be employed. Of course, try coin, for example, Zaytay. Let's see. Let's try coin. And as you can see, this can be a bit tricky because it includes hordes and it includes Bronze Age or hordes. But it doesn't matter now. Here we can refine the search if we need it. This is how an looks like. And some of them I have clicked, as you have seen, the box with 3D. Some of them have this 3D modeling results, which can be quite nice, especially for teaching, I think, especially for showing them off to students. And the entries are quite comprehensive. Here you have information for many and for many fields, and the external links for the spatial coordinates and some similar objects. Good. And the last resource I want to present is focused on numismatics. Of course, numismatics should have had a special section in the presentation because it is such a large and largely developed field. But there are many numismatic catalogs online, many maps with numismatic finds on them. But one of the oldest as well resources is Wild Winds, which is a repository of coins, extremely useful for let's say, useful for analogies. And this is how it looks like. It's not really a sophisticated website. It is rather simple, but if you, as I said, if you have a coin in your hands and you don't know exactly what it is, as you can see, there are a lot of options. This is a very good site for finding the correspondence for that coin and for dating it and for seeing maybe what's on one of the coin's sides in case only one is visible, and so on. And by city authority, you can see, and they have images as well, which again can be used for anything, for presentations, teaching, and for analogies. Okay, thank you. I think I took a bit longer than I have anticipated, but this was it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rada. No, it was a really complete overview. Okay, so I don't know if we have questions, if we want to open the discussion. Well, maybe I wanted just to say that, well, thank you for citing Trismegistus and the thing concerning the subscription, because well, basically the project was obliged to ask support from the community. So this is the reason why now we have this subscription. And of course, on the website, due to the circumstances, they are offering free access because people are at home now. But this is part of the problem we have today also with open access and open data, because technology is expensive, these projects are expensive, and not always is it possible to offer open access and open data. So this is a part of the problem, I have to say. This is the reason why in the publications I mentioned at the beginning, there is also the section concerning basically the business model. Even if we are not expert of economics, we have to take into account this thing, because when we start a project, we have to see how far we can offer a project for free. So this is a very complex question, but still, Trismegistus today is an example where they are asking the support of the community to continue offering this wonderful resource. Okay, so
one probably should say though that a resource that is behind a login is not an open access resource.
Yes.
And regardless of whether one is charging for it or not, if it's also that a resource that is temporarily free during the world lockdown situation is also not an open access resource, because lots of publishers have made their journals available for free. Some Internet Archive stuff has been made available that's under copyright for free. Various other resources, JSTOR and so forth, have made stuff temporarily free. None of those are open access resources. The fact that they are at the moment free doesn't make them open access.
Yes, true.
Yes, exactly. In fact, when you access these resources, always check the situation, and then also the adjective open. It doesn't necessarily mean free. This is another difficult thing. And then the fact to be open involves also that projects use specific standards. So there are many levels. Of course, this session is, well, in the end, the source session, we couldn't explore every aspect of open access and open data. Maybe we can plan a future session really describing precisely what we mean today by open access and open data, also considering other resources beyond digital classes. But there are many levels. Accessibility for the audience is one thing, but then it's the use of common standards and other things. The resources we have been showing, well, they are resources developed in the spirit of the so-called linked open data. So the effort is always to use these standards. And the other problem is that there are resources that began to produce data, well, 20 years ago. We have Tertius files produced 20, 30 years ago, where the situation was very different. Standards were very different. So there is a lot of work where we have to update these resources, to convert these resources into modern standards. So there are many different levels. So when we mention open access and open data, we have to be very careful.
I would like to say that there are different standards and different levels of open access data, but there are also different levels of usability and linkedness. Also, there are at least three aspects in what you showed, Monica and Rada. Well-structured and really useful data. They make clear the authority, who made the file, based on what editions, and things like that. And then as many unique identifiers in the entities inside the data as possible, at least in two respects. For example, the linked open data from the Pleiades that you showed. It's really useful that all the monuments and coins and places and things like that they all have their unique identifiers, so that can be easily linked without that known. And even insight between the different entities in an RDF document, for example. An RDF document is some statement about something. So if you say this is part of this, it really makes no sense if you don't have a really stable identifier for what your statement is about. So as many unique identifiers as possible. And a good documentation is also something which is very important. I really like the Stanford project, the Orbeez project, but it is not to be mistaken with some sort of really random modeling of something that could be produced by anybody with some prowess with graphic interface and so on, because it is based on very, very serious research on distances between places and how you identify them and how you measure the time needed to travel from this point on that point. And this is based on really diverse sources, and it is very well described, and it is really useful if you not only use the model, but read through the documentation that they have described very well. How did they decide that this is the way you calculate the price, for example, of
exactly. That's what I want to say. They also have a very solid background in Roman economics, and those prices are really something you can use. I mean, they have authority, and as you said, it's not something that one of us can just take and let's do a little projection here and this is that. It's a really solid research behind it.
And you can do scholarly work based on that. You can write, they themselves, the people who developed the project, wrote scholarly articles about this or that, because it's really something you can do serious scholarly work based.
Yes, and it's something you can reference to, you can cite without being afraid to do so, which is important, of course, in a resource. And yes. Regarding the discussion about the open data, I think one of the main features for which open data is open and is good is the fact that you can interlink so it's the linked open data. And when a resource needs subscription or needs a login, from that moment on, you cannot link to it anymore, which creates a bias somehow. Of course, these are complicated matters, and the management of these resources and how you keep them up and running, it's very problematic.
Also, the issue of data management that changes over time. So there are some standards which are more and more developed and more imposing these days of so-called FAIR data, findable, interoperable, accessible, and I forgot what the R stood for, but it's really, especially in the long term, as Monica mentioned with the Perseus project, they've been active for over 20 years, so you need to think ahead how to keep your data usable even after a very long period of time.
Yeah, which is something that happens also in a short period of time, because sometimes we are always updating our data. This is a problem, of course, with the technology. And as you mentioned with the links, you can have an open resource, an open website, but then if it's not linking that data, in the end is not open. So even if it's free, it's not open. So yeah, it's complex.
One of the defenses against websites are always going to disappear with the best will in the world. Even if people are still around and it doesn't cost anything to keep it going anymore, websites are going to disappear. That will happen. Not just free websites, commercial websites disappear all the time as well. So it doesn't, there's no defense against that. But the best defense against your material becoming obsolete and disappearing is for the data underlying it, and preferably that data means the code, which is your data, the particular database or a dump of the database, or the XML if that's what it's based on, or the RDF if it's based on that. And data also means some of the code that processes that and turns that into usable data and into the visualizations and whatever you have online. That material has to be free. and that has to be all of the things that that Dimitar said. It has to be fair. It has to be free, accessible. You know, people have to understand how it works, interoperable. It has to be open standards, and I think reusable is the R, isn't it? It's it has to be licensed, so that people have the permission to take that data, do new things with it, without having to ask for special rights to do so. And making that data free and available in all those ways doesn't mean that you can't charge for your website, which has all the bells and whistles on it, that does all the amazing things that people want to search, because 99% of ancient historians will have no use for that data on its own. They don't want to go, they don't want to have to, you know, build their own Spark point and, you know, search your RDF or whatever. They want your really nice website. So you can still charge for access to your website if that's part of your funding model, but having the data available for other people to build on is the only way to embed our digital work in the, you know, the bibliography of scholarship. It's, unless you have open underlying data, you will never be cited in someone else's footnotes, right? In the sense that a book can be. So I think that you know, that also keeps it going beyond your lifetime. It keeps it going, oh, you know, the lifetime of your interest. I mean, digital lifetimes are very short, but or very long, depending on how you look at it. But you know, it makes it. Other people will bring it up to date. The formats will change, and all sorts of things that you didn't imagine will happen with your data.
Yes, I think that this is very, very important, especially for our students in the audience. What Gabe said really is important. So when you use these resources, of course, there are wonderful websites. These websites are the result of a lot of work, expert work, and we need them, of course. But beyond playing with this website, always check the kind of data behind, okay, the situation. This is especially for students, okay, because we can do many things today, also in digital classics, which is in the end a small field, but as we can see, there are many, many resources, but always check the data behind, if it's possible, of course. If you can download them, trying to understand a bit about this data, the kind of data, the level of openness or not, and the reason for this, because there are, of course, practical reasons and problems for this situation. It's not because people, well, maybe we have people against open access, but there are situations where it is not possible to offer open access, etc., etc. So always be aware, even if you don't have a background in computer science or in digital technologies. Today, we have a lot of documentation in these websites. We have publications describing also these formats like CSV, RDF, JSON. So it's not impossible to access, but always check the situation, because this is very important. Also because, yes, websites are very fragile for many reasons. So they are not going to last for various reasons, also because the technology is very fast. But I think this is very, very important, especially for the students. Okay, because otherwise, yes, I don't know. So we can't really understand what is, in this case, digital classics today. Well, is 6:20, at least in Central Europe, and our time is over. Okay, I have notes in the chat. Anise, okay, yeah, well, yes, Orbeez is definitely a wonderful resource, and I know that the community of students in Brazil is very active using and producing resources. I have to mention that because I know that. And okay, I think that our session is over. You have the description online. There are also 3 exercises where you can try to play a bit with these resources. And definitely we will go back to this topic, open access and open data. We always mention these aspects during our sessions, but we can plan other sessions specifically in the fall maybe or next year for discussing the situation, the current situation for open access and open data. Next week, we have a different session, and we have a session about Persian speakers learning ancient Greek. This is another part of our project. We will have Farnoosh Shamsian. She's a PhD candidate in Leipzig from Tehran, and she has been working a lot on exploring how to teach ancient Greek and how Persian speakers can learn ancient Greek. And again, we will definitely talk again about open access and open data, okay, how to provide access to data for ancient Greek to different communities, okay? Okay, so we will meet again next week. As for now, I thank, well, our participants in the audience. Today we have people who are really supporting and who have been contributing a lot to Sunoikisis. And thank you for the audience, and see you next week. Okay, so good night and bye-bye.
Thank you, goodbye.
Thank you.